Welcome to the Nexus Unloaded podcast. This is Will Crozier.
And I'm Zach Congonis. We are here to bring you the best solutions to your lifting problems. Through our real-world experience, we hope to break things down in a digestible, applicable, and entertaining way. Yeah, so I learned a new fact from someone on Instagram. We share aggressive memes to each other. Shout out to K.Speed, Chris. I know his name. We nailed it. And he sent me a meme about how bullfrogs will go in head-to-head wrestling matches for priority poontang.
Yeah, okay.
So the biggest bullfrogs, I mean, that actually makes quite a lot of sense. I mean, people do that, but instead of hand-to-hand combat, it's Instagram combat.
So this is
Yeah.
head-to-head for the frogs? Is that what you're saying? They actually just
Like
butt
docking?
heads?
Well, there's not much else to the frog. Like,
That's true.
70% of their mass is their head and, like, little chunky bod.
Just chomp on each other.
That's
Yeah, so they just...
at its finest.
And they're like, I watched a video, they're doing like suplexes. I mean, like, for someone who's watching, I'll just put this up here and they're fighting. So Craig can watch that. And it's pretty fucking cool.
I love that. Yeah, pretty fucking cool. It's just absolute randomness of random things that we could possibly start this with. I love that.
Yeah,
While we're talking about animals in nature fighting, have you seen giraffes go to war?
Oh, yeah, they club each other.
They club their heads.
That is one of the most intense acts of nature I've
See,
ever witnessed.
that's how I wish that males would, like, fix disputes in our society. Only, like,
the neck's not long enough. Like, non-bending people like me.
I'm not talking about their neck, Will.
Ah, yes. Well, okay. It's not quite the same. not much leverage. I don't think it'll work too well. Not
Will
a very
doesn't
practical approach.
Will doesn't have a neck either, so
Mickey's out of loop. All right. So as you can tell,
what else is going on in the world today?
I was going to say, as you can tell, Alex is here.
Yes.
So as a future part of these podcasts, we are going to try and have more Nexus team members in here, just generally.
Throw a chat.
Getting
Except
Alex
Josh,
in here,
because he's so busy doing homework.
he'll come back. He's in, and just to add more of thoughts to these conversations and tell more frog meme jokes, I guess. But actually, that was my next thing. I actually did mean to ask you about that. Like, what's the weekly question of like, what's the top performing meme of the week?
Oh, so the Family Guy one that I posted did pretty well.
Yeah, talk visually through the meme. It doesn't. The visual audio format for memes isn't great, but talk.
Yeah,
us through
okay.
It anyway.
So it's a excerpt from a Family Guy episode where Brian, for those of you who don't know, Brian is the sentient talking dog, took a blind lady on a date, and whilst walking home, he pretended to stop muggers, which were himself.
yes.
As the blind lady was blind.
Yeah,
That's great brownie points.
and then your relevance to the fitness industry was.
The meme was about how coaches will make up their own problems to solve so their clients think they're better than they are,
Absolutely.
which happens quite a lot.
Big physio thing we talk about as well. Walk in the physio room, my back's kind of sore. You walk in, they're like, oh, yeah, your glutes are really tight. And then you're like, oh, really? Fuck, no, you mention it. Yeah, my glutes are really tight. And then all of a sudden, all you can focus about is your glutes for the next week.
I actually want to challenge anyone who wants to fuck with their physio to go in there and just make up a problem and watch them find it.
And find
And they'd be
solutions
like,
for it.
Gotcha!
For anyone who just has money laying around for no reason, if I was that physio, I'd be like, a cool joke,
What?
man. Where's my $100?
Still got to pay for this session.
He just like slips the high caps thing under the bench. Like, you don't get that.
You've heard that with PTs as well, that like you'll have some clients that maybe been working one-on-one with a PT for many years, and then the clients will, like, knowing full well that PT isn't paying the same amount of attention to them as they did when they first walked in the door, purposely
fuck with
do
them.
stuff wrong just to see if they'll pick up on it. But usually they'll just be like, yeah, 7, 8, that's good work, nice, 9. So
There's definitely a lot of relevance to the industry. There's definitely not one example. That's a very widespread thing. And I guess it comes with the fact that it's like a fairly new industry. Like, there are no defined rules. Nobody can do it. The lack of maybe qualifications, as in like, just lack of education. And then even that education is a little bit funky. We don't actually know as much as what we probably think we do about the body and creating adaptations and stuff like that. It's a little bit it's a little bit muddy water anyway. Like you can say stuff and you can be right, but then you can be wrong, and then you can kind of, like there's a lot. Fitness
You can
industry,
justify anything.
Yeah,
You can make
it's
a point that anything's useful.
Yeah, and it can be like that. So I think it's a great meme.
Cool story,
Review
bro.
out of 10.
Not bad. I think, yeah, it's an interesting conversation because it's obviously we're going to talk about today how that kind of comes into the coaching equation, and then, how you then communicate those things with people, how to work with people, and how to solve the real problems, maybe instead of creating fictional problems that you need to solve.
Making yourself seem relevant.
Yeah.
But we've been doing a lot of thought and on Nexus and Nexus, the values and coaching principles that we have, and that sort of line, things that we really care about as a big umbrella to as all the little things that we do. So like all the little decisions that we make when it comes to putting numbers on a spreadsheet or picking a certain exercise or whatever, all come under these big principles, and it has a lot to do with how we view the body and our previous education, our previous biases, our previous experiences. There's lots to it. And although I've said before that we're all different people and have different ones of each of those things, we all follow a relatively similar, we're all pretty on a similar page, like Zach might program more bouncy boy EMOMs, but we have similar reasons, like it's like
the underpinning values and beliefs are the same. It's just the application of those beliefs can change depending on who's doing what.
Well, we all agree on more things that we disagree on, but I think just unfortunately with the industry, you'd hope so. But unfortunately with the industries, we tend to probably bias and focus more on the things we disagree on and talk around those more than the productive conversations. Yeah.
So Zach and I came up with a pretty short list of all the kind of aspects of coaching that we kind of value deeply. I'm sure as we go through these, we'll discover more, but we're going to just basically today talk about each of those principles and then a bit of a run through from us all on about how we actually apply that, about how we might be slightly different on all these things, working in different settings or working with different populations with different goals, but like it all leads back to these things. So the big overarching thing that we're going to talk today about is that coaching should be a personable, individual process and a client-centered process, as in like things like we like to individualize programs or individualize feedback. We think that's really valuable. We like to make sure everybody can get it's put forward the idea that there are multiple different ways that you can get a result or get to somebody their goals without making their life terrible around it and forcing them into one box. So we've done a couple of episodes previously on individualization, so we won't go hard on that. But Zach, you mentioned the word accommodation, as in like accommodating two clients and then it's getting them to their goals in a way that suits them. So do you want to break down what that means to you?
Yeah, so that aspect of accommodation and how that ties into a more human-centered approach ends up looking more like, how do we make this plan fit the lifestyle of this person and fit those secondary aspects of them? Not as much the actual, I was going to say meat and potatoes, but depends how many potatoes they ate, the actual meat and bone of the person. Because at the end of the day, they do kind of react similarly. Everyone has tendons and ligaments and muscles, and they all respond to stimulus in a relatively similar way. But that aspect of accommodation more so comes down to, okay, if Steve-O's a bricklayer and he only smokes darts and eats dare iced coffee for breakfast, and Margaret's a mother of four and only has 40 minutes to train, the individualization and the accommodation is going to come more from those perspectives that, Margaret's 5'2" and Steve-O's 6'9".
Yeah, I think for me this comes back to when I was younger and I was going through my real educational phases and doing every course under the sun and trying to learn what the perfect program, perfect assessment, and perfect everything was. You kind of start to you discover certain things along the way, and I found the answer, I found the thing, And then over time, you start to realize, as you get more and more educated and work with more and more people, especially that second part, you start to realize that so many things work. Like literally, like unless you're doing something fucking just absolutely left field, you can get a result. You can get results, different days, different programs, different equipment, different anything. Like it's just, there's just so many things, and you can absolutely fit, always find something that fits a person's life, no matter what the restrictions. There are sometimes some expectations that have to be adjusted for that. So if, who was the first guy that you mentioned?
Steve-O with his Dart and Durry breakfast, D&D.
Yeah, Steve-O comes in and he's saying, like, I'm absolutely not willing to budge in my lifestyle at all. I fucking love it.
Love those Winnie Blues.
Yeah. Love all that. But I want to get shredded and pack on a heap of muscle and, be the best powerlifter in the world. I'm going to be like, mate, can we meet in the middle?
Yeah.
Like there's going to be some expectation management, but I have no doubt we can make it work for you. We can get you progress in some regard as long as we have a reasonable goal there.
Yeah, a reasonable goal, a reasonable time frame, and a reasonable attitude from the client as well. And it's like, it's not about, it has to be like this and this is the attitude you have to have, but just meeting them, like you said, somewhere in the middle, where you can both, get some productive conversation happening to figure out what is the best thing for this person at this time.
Yeah. Have you had to accommodate a lot for people in the gym here?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Any Charlie name coming in?
We're not pulling anyone out, especially Charlie, who's the biggest pest of them all. But yeah, it's like, because the more you go on, especially with the way that Nexus Gym works, is we're going to sit down with every single person that comes through the door, and we're going to have that chat initially to figure out those things and to find out a little bit more about them and how they operate, how they function, how they respond, what ticks them off, what issues and problems they're having from a lifestyle, a training perspective, a diet perspective, because all those things are all encompassing, all important. And even maybe each domain needs its own separate approach. It's not all as uniform across the board, and you need to converse to figure that out. How else do you find out about a person unless you have a conversation with them, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
We were talking about that this morning on our walk, is just like, even when you start to build an issue in, like, let's just say there is a little bit of a communication breakdown between coach and client, because sometimes that happens, right? Like there's times where like the client is expressing frustrations or concerns about something that you may not be picking up, or you're picking up vibes that the client's frustrated or all consumed in something that really they just made as a passing comment. So having the communication in terms of just a phone call really breaks down a lot of those like barriers in terms of how you can then continue to accommodate them moving forward and what their needs actually are.
What you're saying is like, to tie it back to the human-centered approach, is you're treating them like a human. You're going, hey, you're a human with human problems, and they're getting in the way of the lifter problems you're having, and we're going to look at solving them, and then it's not just all about more volume, less volume, more intensity, less intensity, this exercise is better, that exercise better, but about individualizing and accommodating to them. So I feel like that's
finding an effective way to communicate that.
Big. So if you want to learn more on our individualization beliefs, me and Zach did two whole episodes on individualization before, which goes into not only this stuff that we just talked about a little bit, communication, but also at a program level, like things like RPE and stuff, which could be directly tied to individualization if you're doing it properly. The second dot point that we've got here, and all these are going to tie into each other. We're probably going to end up saying the same thing 50 times, but is long-term progression and the way in which we do that. So we are just pretty big around this whole concept of long-term progression, as in, like, if you want to be the best powerlifter on the planet, or you just want to be healthier, fitter, stronger, whatever goal it is, you got to understand that it's going to be a long-term thing. It's not going to be the next 12-week challenge type thing and then it's going to end. Long-term progression towards your goal is what we are all about, and we set things in place to make sure that you are set up for long-term progression, that there is a path beyond, and that comes back to our game planning sessions and goal setting sessions and how we can go about that. But we're going to look at
and beyond.
Secondary effects. Me and Zach talked at length about that in previous episodes, but secondary effects that are going to potentially, not right now, make you faster, bigger, stronger, whatever your goal is. Not right in this very moment, better, but like in 6 months, 12 months, 2 years, 3 years, 4 years, 5 years time down the track. So, hey, having a long-term view is, I feel, a big part of Nexus and what we do.
It's sitting down and assessing long-term, short-term, so you've got some steps along the way to kind of get there, but just keeping that in the back of the mind as well, and even revisiting that. Like, that's something that we do in the game plan session. We'll ask, has the long-term goal changed for you?
Yeah.
We picked on Charlie before, we'll pick on her again. Her goal changes every 45 minutes, you know what I mean? So it's constant reevaluation and just checking in, like, hey, are we still working towards this thing? Is this something you still want to do, or has it changed? I think that's definitely a worthwhile question asking.
And with that as well, when you have people who may have those varied interests, part of setting up that mindset of long-term progression means you need to give them a little bit broader of a foundation than some people might think. It's not as much as saying, if you want to be a great powerlifter or you want to be able to progress for an extended period of time, let's just do squat, bench, and deadlift. If those priorities change, having that wider base of, say, some different fitness qualities or some other skills to be able to satisfy those demands. Like, I know you, Alex, you've been stepping into some jumpy boys, and that's something that you have done in the past, which has made re-stepping back into those a little bit easier. Like in the phone call that we had, I did not give you enough credit
on that.
I was like, Alex, you're not going to be bounding. You're going to fucking blow your patellas out. And you were like, come on, man. I'll be fine. So having that...
are a little sore from week 1, but that's okay. We'll talk about that later.
As they should be. But having that slightly wider base can give people the option to shift that long-term goal if needed and have the freedom to move within that, because part of it's not as much novelty, but giving someone the ability to just have some fun in different domains can really project them further forward into the future in enjoying training.
Yeah, I was going to say enjoyment is a massive part of long-term thinking. Like, because if anybody's there, I know when we're all 18, you go, hey, I'm going to be Mr. Olympia or whatever, and I'm just going to train so hard every single day. I'm going to hit my macros, and you have this vision how that's going to be, and then life comes along, or you do it for a few years, and then you're like, oh, this is kind of boring now. This kind of sucks. There's, life gets in the way, goals change, life changes, and we have to be flexible with that. And enjoyment is a massive part of long-term progression, whether you want it to be or not. We can program things with the sake of pure enjoyment, but usually, like Zach said, with the bouncy stuff that you've been doing, it might be like 50% an enjoyment thing, and then it might be 50% hey, I'm going to set up Alex, give him some of these plyos so that his tendons in his lower leg are a little bit more durable, so that when we go into a more specific comp prep, his knees don't hurt as much, or something like that. You might have a justification on it as well for that, hopefully.
Sure. So
there can be multiple avenues in which you can look at these things, but I think enjoyment is a worthwhile consideration when coming up with picking these things. Whereas some really strict coaches might go like, nah, everything needs a reason. I need an absolute fucking definition as to why this is in the program. And that approach could be useful, again, for certain circumstances, if this person's limited on time or whatever, what matters most. But anyway, it's, again, comes back to the individual.
Yeah, for sure. The enjoyment is obviously a massive factor, and that's something that we're always trying to, especially within powerlifting, because if you just put it down to the simple movement patterns and kept everything as basic, you would get pretty bored of it pretty quickly, unless you have that kind of, you have something else tying you to that long-term goal. You have something else that's a little bit more motivating to drive you to it, or maybe you have a different expectation of yourself. But for the majority of people, it's just not the case. And most people do have things that come up in the way, and they want to find ways to make training just a little bit more engaging and enjoyable, especially if you're going to be doing it for many, many years. And that's something that has always been in the back of my mind. It's like, I want to be doing this for as long as possible. And I can feel myself when I'm doing the same thing for too long to start losing a bit of that passion and love for it and feeling a bit monotonous. And that's a good time to have a conversation with your coach. Hey, what can we change up? I want to bias a little bit more of this stuff. I want to have a little bit more fun. And there's nothing wrong with that.
What can be difficult as well is, I think the majority of people don't enjoy actually squat, benching, deadlift as much as they let on. They enjoy the progress or the benefit they see from it. And it's why when somebody first comes into powerlifting and they see this massive increase in everything, they're seeing that progress, they're enjoying that, Then they hit like the shit sandwich period of powerlifting where everything's just hard and you're just grinding for half a kilo and you train for 12 months and still have a worse comp. That enjoyment factor goes right down because they're not seeing that result. Eventually someone will hit that point. And I think that being conscious of what's actually driving you to enjoy the thing that you're doing is important. Because if it's only the result, then you're going to want to swap that goal up to get some newbie gains in other areas, grab that handful of dopamine, then go back to working through the shit sandwich.
Yeah. And the things that can make you, we've already kind of said this, but the more general stuff, like the other stimulus, the non-SBD stuff, as long as you can kind of relate it back to, you can get away with so much wider than you think. Like Zach, you were just telling me, I think last week about somebody who said like, we've been doing the least specific program ever, brought him back and hit like a best, I think it was a 3RM or some shit like that.
Fucking good old Ben Hester. He's just been doing jumps and runs and sprints and shit. He's been benching 1 day a week for like 2 sets and he tripled his comp max. And I was like, oh, okay, that's cool.
Exactly. You can really get away with a lot. I think people, again, to go back to what I said before, you think this is what you need to do, but really like as long as it's not fucking stupid and just absolutely something completely random, you can get away with so much.
We just push everyone to doing like jumps and runs.
No, I don't want people to just do randomness. I still want a reason.
Yeah.
But I'm just saying like your reason can be much less direct than you think.
We talked about the whole monotony or whatever of it. It's like people tie a lot of their identity as powerlifters to like, I'm a powerlifter, therefore I must only do SBD. So I think breaking away from identifying yourself solely as a powerlifter. And one of the things we say a lot is that you're a human before you're a powerlifter. So there are a lot of other qualities that you need to be working on alongside the powerlifting specific qualities that need addressing and improving.
Yeah. And again, like I said, all these things tie together. Like last week, we were talking with Luke Lehman about hypertension, high blood pressure, and about how that can affect health and performance and how those things are somewhat tied. And one of the concepts that we spoke about was having an exit plan after a comp. So being okay with sacrificing a little bit of that stuff for the good of hitting some PBs in a competition setting. And then after it, you just need to go, like, hey, I need an exit plan. I need to be able to get back to health. I need to bring back these general qualities. I need to bring back some aerobic capacity, whatever it is. All these different things are going to keep me progressing long term. So they're the human before powerlifter, the long-term progression, the individualization. You can see how they're all very intertwined to a degree. And we've listed them down separately here, but they're all this human-centered approach that we're discussing. One thing, Zach, that you said about that we all said about enjoyment there that I wanted to quickly touch on as well was you said like motivation, and you kind of mentioned motivation there. One thing you'll hear from a lot of people when they hit that shit phase that you're talking about, where it starts to become a bit of a grind, you've kind of tapped out your skill, and now it's about accumulating work and not getting injured, essentially, getting more jacked. Some people will throw out the phase then of like, nah, man, like motivation's for pussies. You just got to discipline your way through it. And if you actually understood the mechanisms of motivation and how it worked, like you need to be motivated to be disciplined. Like they're absolutely fucking tied together. So I think it's just an really like not thought through statement. It sounds cool and hardcore at the time, but like it's just not fucking life. Like nobody's out here getting paid for powerlifting. No one has to stick to powerlifting. Nobody has to do the comp. Nobody has to even fucking train. So like to say like you have to be disciplined, it's like so full of shit.
It's not to say that you have to listen to like some Goggins shit to get yourself super hyped up and motivated.
I think everyone was thinking Goggins then.
An hour of Goggins before every training session. If you're at that point, yeah, we need it. Yeah, we come game plan session. You know, fucking we'll work out something different.
Bring David G in. We'll have a chat.
Yeah,
sort his lifestyle out. But like, yeah, that's an interesting point of it as well. And it's, you know, it doesn't have to be so specific that you're just tying yourself into, you know, you're talking before about jumps and throws and like, hey, we don't have to go over there as well. And that's, maybe that's not powerlifting or whatever. But if you go and watch some like West Side videos, those guys are jumping crazy heights. They're doing sled drags.
They're doing a lot of things.
And there's probably a lot of things as well that would be like, oh, you know, cool. Maybe we wouldn't do all of those things. But I think it's just looking at all of these different approaches and finding what's useful for the person that's in front of you at the time as well, and not being tied or blocking or limiting yourself away from certain processes or styles of training just because it's unfamiliar or it's against the grain or whatever. It's like, well, everything works, like we said, right?
Well, on that same token too, and I think this is the trap that a lot of people fall into, if you go down the list of secondary and tertiary benefits far enough, anything can benefit anything. Like me and Brandon were talking the other day about how someone was saying, cool, cleans can be a great way of teaching you how to yield forces in the bottom position and have all these secondary benefits. It's like, yeah, cool, it definitely does that. But I don't think I've ever programmed someone to clean so they could get better at dealing with ground forces in the bottom position.
Right.
Like, I'm not thinking about that. Yeah, like I've never programmed that, and I probably won't program that. So understanding that, okay, you can probably find a spot for anything and loosely justify it, because like Will said in the beginning, we don't really know as much as we like to think we know about things.
Yeah.
And a lot of the driving force behind progression in general is just stimulus. And who fucking knows what that stimulus actually takes form in all of these different pieces of athletic endeavors. So trying things, seeing how they work, and enjoying the process of learning a new skill or challenging your ability to conceptualize different skills can be a massive improvement to whatever domain you're trying to get better at.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I agree. Especially the longer I've gone, and the more people I've coached, like it's just something that rings more and more true, I think.
Definitely.
The next point that we have on this list was it's kind of again very similar thing, but like getting jacked is the key to long-term performance in powerlifting. I want to say, because Zach, I know that like getting jacked isn't necessarily a big carrier to like weightlifting or whatever. It's definitely in there.
Definitely doesn't hurt. I mean, you look at most of them, and they're fucking huge. Unless they're Lasher, then it looks like Lasher ate the last 4 weight classes.
I think we can say Lasher is jacked. I don't think we're here saying he's a skinny boy. I think definitely agree on that. But yeah, for powerlifting in particular, like there's a skill tree. We've talked about it. You can get down there. There becomes a point where I feel like your ROI on skill, as in like getting a lot better at squatting, benching, and deadlifting, kind of hits a little bit of a. You just really can maximize that out. I'm not saying easily, like, because like I still come up with shit every now and then where I'm like, oh fuck, that's it. But it's like you can definitely relearn and learn things, but or forget things. But if you spend a decent amount of like time on something where you're hitting like a high frequency approach, where you're hitting squat, bench, deadlift with a fair bit of your programming volume over a week, like you can bring up that skill pretty fucking quick, and you can go away from that skill and be general, like we said, get jacked, build more muscle. You might be 1RM, less 1RM strong right now, but you can get it back pretty fucking quick in a peak. So like, why are we trying to stay peaked all the time and keep these skills absolutely maxed up all the time? Instead, let's put them some effort into getting more jacked to build more tissue so we can produce more force. Or like you posted up, Zach, one of your posts the other day was about simplifying coaching a little bit and focusing on what people just don't have, or what they suck at. So if somebody's squats look like deadlifts and their deadlifts look like deadlifts, or they're or the other way around, they can't hinge to save their life or whatever, maybe we go down a little bit of that other road and give them, some more of what they suck at or whatever, or what they don't have access to, or what they've never been exposed to. It's more, again, going back to the generalized approach, but yeah.
Well, like you have these fundamental movement patterns, and I feel like people can fall into the trap of saying, cool, squat. And as soon as you say squat, their mind instantly goes to like low bar back squat. Like a squat's a squat. And if you get stronger at any squat, it's most likely going to bolster the pieces that contribute to every squat. Like I was talking to Artie about this the other day, and how he's been seeing some people being like, oh man, you haven't squatted with a bar on your back in a couple of months. Like, what are you doing? And it's like, if your safety bar goes up, your low bar is probably going to go up.
Yeah, like pretty close.
It's almost the same thing.
I love it when people go like, a safety bar's not specific, a safety bar squat. I'm like, fuck, bro, you're like it's a bar on your back.
Yeah.
Like, come on, man.
We're pretty close.
Yeah, I think in powerlifting, our view of specificity is so, like, if it's not a low bar squat or a low bar like tempo or low bar pause, like, of course they're like the most specific, but even our less specific variations are quite specific. I feel like it's a trap we can fall into in powerlifting a lot.
Well, it's like one of the least specific squat variations someone will give someone is a high bar squat. And for some people, that's like an inch and a half of difference. And look, I'm not saying an inch and a half isn't a lot. In some circumstances, it's all you need. But in the context of overall movement patterns, like it's not a huge difference. Like you could do a whole prep with high bar and the day of the meet swap to low bar and still probably squat a comparable amount. It might feel fucking
not
awful.
Ideal. Don't do that.
Not ideal, but you probably
it's not
could.
ideal, but like,
and
you probably get away with it because we did a lot of that for myself. Because when I started to reintroduce low bar, my shoulders were like, "Oi, what the fuck?" And then we thought it would be a good idea to do a top set of the low bar and then back off with the high bar, which really, at the end of the day, like you're talking about, was like an inch different up on the shoulders. So, you know, it all works and it gets the job done. And especially if the low bar wouldn't have got the job done to the best effect in that my shoulders got destroyed. This was this is almost now the best thing, because the first best thing, the most ideal, optimal thing, dare I use that word, wasn't optimal for me.
There's multiple pros and cons to all this. If your low bar squat is the most strong squat in a YRM sense for you, that's great, but it has other negative qualities. And if you can do 5 times as much volume through a high bar squat, that's probably going to be the one that's going to make you a lot, like actually build strength a lot better than expressing strength with the low bar. So there are a time and place for all this stuff.
Well, bringing this back to the main topic, which was getting bigger, getting jacked, like how much is a low bar squat really going to help that process of getting bigger, getting jacked?
Again, like it's just, there's a lot more trade-offs, a lot more fatigue trade-offs to a low bar squat that's allowing, like the ideal hypertrophy exercise, I'm actually lifting fuck all and giving like a lot of stimulus for that. You know, I'm not beating myself up and getting a lot of stimulus for it. So I'm going to use a much bigger range of motion. I'm going to use stuff that I have to use a lot less. I can use a lot less weight that don't beat my joints up, all that stuff. So yeah, we got so far away from it, but it's all interlinked in here. But I guess back to the original point, getting jacked. Big part of it. Eat your veggies, people. Eat your calories. Eat your cereals. Eat all the food.
Do your leg extensions.
Do some of that. Yep. Fuck it. Yep.
Do it all.
Just be a bodybuilder every now and then. It won't hurt you as a powerlifter. Trust me.
Doesn't hurt.
The next one we've got is building a base foundation. But holy shit, we've just, I think, smashed that at length over the last few topics. In understanding and in practice. Did you have anything to add to that, Zach, that hasn't been covered already?
Probably to bring it back to the point of skill development and saying that if you can get someone to be better at solving problems with their flesh suit, they're probably going to adapt to situations better. It's like if you watch a gymnast or you watch a footy player go into a gym, you give them the skill or the movement of a barbell squat and they're like, fuck, I'm not on my head, or there's not this gigantic Samoan man trying to steal my insides. Like, this is easy.
Yeah, pick up pretty quick.
Yeah, and if you...
Have you done gymnastics before? What was your experience? Can we unpack that for a minute, or should we move on?
Just like having flashback to some like old bearded man in a fucking full tracksuit. No. But yeah, it's the matter of you get people to enjoy the point of developing skills and you give them that large base foundation in that, and they will chew through simple movement problems like a squat. If they have to shift a little bit to the left because something's gone wrong, they'll have the capacity and the desire to do that. Instead of just having someone who's just like, okay, my name is fucking Sagittal Steve. I can only go and I'm like a train. If the train deviates a little bit off this track, I'm just going to shit myself, fall over, cry, and commit seppuku. Like,
why are there so many Steves in your analogies today?
I don't know. It's I'm looking at the essence today.
Yeah, plot twist is all actually the same guy.
Yeah, it's just one fucking dude. But
I think you've used that analogy a few times in the past, Will, like being on the train track versus being a car and being able to change lanes. And
yeah, it's an analogy I've made before, as in like your off season, you should have options. You should be more like that. You'd be able to turn, fucking do lots of different stuff.
Do some U-turns.
Yeah, turn left and turn right, and then you
do some burnouts.
Do some doughies.
The goal is to be that dick on the motorbike just weaving between cars.
Yeah, fucking oath. You have options, right? Whereas
that's what we're turning Alex into with all of his jumps and throws. Alex is our motorbike rider.
It's getting a little bit more that way. But only so you can come back and be a train. Trains can only go one way. They own the tracks. They can only go straight forward, but fuck, they can put a lot of torque down. They can move a lot. They can move a lot of weight. You know what I mean?
But also if you want to get from A to B, homie's cutting holes in mountains so that train can go straight. Like it's the fastest way to get there.
Yeah.
I think we extended that metaphor out a bit too far.
Absolutely. Yeah, I'm sure we can take it even further. But hey, I think the general concept of it is pretty sound.
What was the main topic we were talking about with this again?
I do have a fun fact if I want to continue pushing this before. Part of the limiter in speed of the Japanese bullet train isn't the actual ability of the train to go fast, but it's the problem that occurs when they enter the tunnels because they create such a loud boom on the other side that it disturbs wildlife and residents. So it's not that the train can't go faster, but it makes too much noise when it hits a tunnel because of the compressed air. There you go.
Just cut down the whole mountain.
That's
trains.
Facts. Did you read that on the back of one of Dakota's hats?
Yeah, it was a Japanese branded Tampax, so they're all culturally appropriate.
So the next one that we have is we've again mentioned this already a little bit, but having a more collaborative approach with lifters, and this ties into. That word collaborative ties into many parts of the process in terms of setting goals. Hey, they're going to sit down with you. They're going to have a conversation about your goals. I'm not going to be like, hey, Steve, let's.
This is what you want to achieve, Steve.
Yeah, but in 12 weeks' time, we're going to hit this comp. Sound good? Bam. All right. Then you're just like kind of.
It's a dictatorship.
Even though you are asking them, you are forcing the hand a little bit. Whereas we like to have a little bit more of a collaborative approach, as in like, hey, what do you want to achieve? And then getting real, making sure that you're not just saying that you want to compete in 12 weeks because your best mate said that, and then making sure it is actually your goal. And all the multiple ways that we can get there, we're going to be collaborative on that and putting a program together that actually works for you, because that's going to lead to the best results. Like there's collaboration at every part of the process so that you're involved in it. We're both. It's not just me telling you what to do. There's actually you learn from the process, and you can make deviations along the way. You can think for yourself a little bit. There's a lot of good things that come from it, and it leads to a better long-term relationship between coaches.
Better long-term relationship, better results. Especially for if you have a client that knows what's going on a little bit more. Like, how much easier is that client to work with than someone who just has no idea? Yeah,
understanding the process, huge, but you can only get there through a collaborative approach where you're talking about that.
Well, this is a conversation I actually had yesterday on a podcast that I was a guest on, in the sense that, like, coaches are wanting to, like, withhold information. Some coaches, obviously not us, but a lot of coaches withhold information from their client because they're like, oh, I don't want them to know everything because then they don't need me anymore. And my argument against that was, like, if your clients actually understand what the fuck they're doing, they're more inclined to follow along with what you're asking them to do because they know the importance of why that's there.
Yeah, and when their goals shift, they're not like, I'm not going to tell Zach that I want to fucking be a race car driver now and I don't want to be a powerlifter anymore. I'm just going to tell him that it costs too much and then go find somebody else. Like, we can talk about it and we can work out the problems together, because that's what a coach is, a problem solver. At the fundamental level. So, like, it's building that sort of relationship where we can both bring ideas to the table, and it is about them and their results. That's what coaching is. It just works so much better for everybody.
From that perspective as well, I think it's important to mention that it can sometimes get too collaborative, especially with Alex's point that, oh, yes, it is easy when the client knows what they're doing, but I don't know a more frustrating thing than coaching another good coach. Because
that's what you're saying. Yeah.
If they have something they really want to try, and what you fucking did this to me, Alex. What was the thing that you really wanted to do that I said was dumb as shit, and I let you do it, and 2 weeks later you were like, yeah, that was stupid.
Yeah, it was like some like machine chest press before the barbell, and I thought, no, I think that'll work well. I got under the bar, I could barely move 60 for 2 reps. I was like, oh, this is so good.
So yeah, Alex was harping on me to put it in there, and I was like, look, I think it's stupid, but you can do it. And sometimes you do have to do that. Like, within that collaborative approach, sometimes you have to make a choice that you kind of know isn't the best, so the person can learn and feel like their voice has been heard, but there has to be a line to that. Like, sometimes I just flat out say no because it's.
I think you can approach that. like if Alex, you came, I don't know how your conversation went, so I'm not saying you did it wrong, Zach. But if you came to me and said that, my response would be like, why? Like, what? Tell me the reason. Like, let me explain to me what you see as the benefit, and then you might go like X, Y, Z, and I would go like, that's good. Actually, that's a good theory that you have.
Here's why you're wrong.
Let's do it. Let's take that same concept that you're talking about and just apply it in a slightly different way. But usually, it's more like nobody's going to suggest something just because they suggest something stupid, knowing it's stupid. Like they have a thought line behind it, they have a reasoning behind it.
Like a lot of my programming up until recently had like leg curls and calf raises and things like that before my squat and
because the bodybuilding program very different. Yeah, it's a hypertrophy program. There's no skill involved.
But I was still doing squat, bench, and deadlift. Yeah,
but if the squat, bench, and deadlift isn't the priority. Getting big's the priority. See, it's just like it's getting you to understand why. It's not that that's a horrible idea. It's just maybe doesn't work in this particular context, and let's work out why you actually think that, and maybe we can kind of come together on it and work out a slightly better way. It's not just shutting down ideas. It's about being collaborative and going like.
What was your reason for that?
I'm trying to think of it the whole time you were
talking. He did not have one. He did not have one at all.
Shut up.
Fuck off, Zach.
I think it was to do it so that I'd get a poor result and go, Zach, you fucked my program.
I'm assuming you'd just be load limiting or something like that.
It was some kind of, I think I was like dealing with the wrist or something at the time, or shoulder, and it was
trying to get some volume in and then load limit.
Yeah.
But it was terrible.
Makes sense.
Yeah, but limiting, and then my response to that would be like limiting load because you're fatigued is not the goal. We can limit load in other ways via, I don't know, like a constraint, like a tempo or some shit, and then you can get a lot more out of that.
I'll go work with Will for a bit. I think that's the...
That's all right. That's fine.
Enough, have you? Had enough?
Zach says, fuck you.
It's only been 18 months, mate. Come on.
Actually, on a completely different note, Will, you brought up tempos, and this is something I've been thinking of. We only have one more thing left, so I want to interject this
Jordan
quickly.
just walked in, so she said, hurry up.
Hey, tell Jordan to come into frame.
Jordan.
No, she's just...
Stop.
He's gone.
So... I've been prescribing tempos more with lower rep and fuck off heavy work because I can no longer see the value in, not no longer see the value, but I don't see as much value left in, say, a very, like a 6 or a 5, maybe a 6 or above set of tempo squats because the load is limited.
Tired.
Yeah, exactly. It's not as much of a quality use of that constraint as going fuck off heavy for very low rep schemes.
Yeah, the limiting factor, I think it just comes back to limiting. The limiting factor is going to be endurance mostly. Whereas like we don't want that. We want the limiting factor to be skill. Right? So it just makes more sense to use a lower rep. I think that's and that's where this whole idea between like something can be heavy but not hard is very valuable to understand the difference between weight on the bar versus proximity to failure and how you can cross those over in different ways. They're not completely separate. We were talking earlier about how people who are less informed will go, oh, are you a RPE guy or like a load guy or a percentage guy? And it's like, well, actually they're completely fucking different things. One's weight on the bar and one's proximity to failure. And whether you write it or not, you're always controlling those things. So again, understanding the process and being a little bit more aware of all the different factors that come into training. Yeah.
And I mean, when you are aware of those pieces and you are able to convey to the client, okay, this is why we're doing these things. And like Mickey said, not withholding information, it does allow the lifters to have a little bit more autonomy in how they're approaching their plan and how they're able to actually interact with that plan. Because I know that especially, and I've made this mistake in the past of babying people too much. I've kind of taken away their autonomy, and they're like, "Dada, what I do now?" No, that was meant to be a baby voice.
Wow. Excuse me, thick Pappy Chungus. What's next?
Old baby. That baby's been through puberty.
It's got a nice
autonomy. We've mentioned motivation before and talked about motivation. Autonomy is one of the main pillars of motivation. So you need to feel autonomy. You need to feel and by autonomy, we mean feeling somewhat involved in the process, being able to make decisions, being able to think for yourself within the training process and bring forward ideas and just be a part of the conversation, I guess. if you don't feel that, and it's been shown it's a lot less motivating. Like you're way less likely to be motivated to actually put an effort and go hard in training and
100%.
move towards your goals.
Yep.
So like we're always trying to, again, that's one of the reasons we're always trying to involve people in it. We're always trying to go at every step of the way, even if I'm talking technique advice. Of course, there are fundamentals of technique. Of course, we have our kind of picture in our head of what we want technique to be and where this person does or does not fit that, how we can move them in the right direction with it. But I am still always going to bring the person in on it and go like, how does this feel?
Yeah.
Or how does that feel? And what do you think we should change? How about we do this? And like get them to understand why we want to push our knees out, not just, hey, push your knees out. Why? Oh, because that's how you squat. No, like, so there's a deeper fucking understanding here that needs to be conveyed, and that person will be way more likely to do it the way you want.
Especially with that effective communication. Something that we didn't touch on within all this that I've probably extracted more so from Nexus when I first came on, and that's something that you've always reiterated to me, especially when writing programs, especially online programs where you maybe have a little bit less contact with this person, you have a little bit less of that conversation and ongoing discussion. It's just really just trying to put yourself into their shoes as much as possible and see things also from their perspective.
Yeah.
And you'll get such a better understanding of the person who you're talking to and how they're going to navigate certain things that you ask them to do, especially for the example of like, hey, we're doing 8 reps of tempo squats with a 4-seek. Put yourself in that person's shoes. If you looked at that program and you saw your coach wrote that, you'd probably be like, fuck that, I'm not doing it. So why would your client be any different?
Especially if it's like, was it Sally that you said that's a mum of 5 and doesn't have that? Like, you need to be able, not that Zach is a Sally mum of 5 that only has 45 minutes to train, but at least being able to understand some of her own lifestyle difficulties and program accordingly to that. Like, they're two very different, unique individuals that, if you can understand what she needs in her lifestyle, you can program her accordingly to them. And
she's going to be super set Sally.
Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah. And it's not that you have to, like Mickey said, like I don't have to be a single mum of 4 to be able to understand the time constraints or the practical constraints that are on that person. Like, yes, I may not understand the whole emotional side, but I can very clearly see you are heavily poor on time. I have things in my toolkit that help get around being heavily poor on time.
Yeah.
And boiling it down to those simple things. And yes, trying to understand and address the emotional side to the best of your capacity, which in my instance is not very high for most emotional capacities.
Yeah, you can talk through it.
Yeah, you can talk through things, but taking...
be a good human.
Yeah, taking the overarching problems that you can see and act on and being like, okay, I can take these things and waddle away and make a plan based off those.
Yeah, for sure. And I think that's one thing, like Will said, he struggled a lot with when he was an up-and-coming PT. He's like, what?
Oh, fuck. When any of us were 18 and you thought that
Gym is life.
Gym is like I remember, gym was like the first thing in my calendar for the day, and then I'll build work around that. I'll build my food around that. I'll build my life around that. So like everything, all of my decisions revolved around that. Whereas when you got older, that books become a bit more filled, priorities flip, and you have to fit in training maybe where it fucking is. And
I remember you saying that, like in your first year of training, you were like, why the fuck don't you want to be here for 3 hours of the day? What is wrong with you? Like, this is the best part of my day.
I didn't understand that some people don't like training. I'm like, I fucking love it. It's the best part of my day. When I walk through that door, I got a big smile on my face and I'm walking around like, fuck yeah, training time. And then I'll train some clients and then they were like, I didn't do my sessions this week or whatever that you prescribed me. And I'm like, what? Like, isn't that the best part of your day? What are you doing?
Yeah.
And then as you get older, you get more experience with more people and you can put yourself in their shoes that little bit better. Yeah, it's absolutely a skill. Yeah, but it's also just experience. It's just dealing with a lot of people with a lot of different problems and not trying to force your beliefs on them, but actually listen to them and listen to their problems. And
I think just initially understanding that, though, is important. Like, just understanding that the gym is not everyone's favorite place. And that...
Well, not everyone likes to smash daddies like me or whatever. Like, they don't like particular exercises or they don't like particular foods or whatever. Like, everyone's different,
especially with most people, because that's not what they're looking for. Most people are looking for just the result, and they're not too fussed necessarily on how they get it or how they go about it.
They don't think they are.
Well, yep. Until you mold them to little
to
deadlifting
ask a few
machines.
questions. You deep into it, you psychologist them.
Get in there nice and deep, like.
You got to do it with the accent. You get in there nice and deep, like.
All right, I
Rubbing your
think
belly
that's a
button
good one.
hole whilst you do
I
that,
don't
Zach?
remember the lip noises and
No,
movements,
neither do
but
You got to smack him.
Some effects.
Smack 'em.
Oh, God. Okay, he looks like a
All right.
lizard now.
Well, I
It's like
think that's a good
bullfrog.
place to end today.
Bring it back to the
Yes.
bullfrogs.
Yeah. All right.
Taste it
Well,
up,
thank you for coming in today, Alex.
I was already here, but you're welcome.
Yeah.
I work here.
Yeah, he's just chained Kiva to the desk while he was away from it.
You should get a chain.
We should get Kiva on this. Could you imagine?
I thought you were
Kiva?
going to
Oh,
agree.
fuck. Have
Could
you
you
got 4
imagine?
hours for a podcast?
Yeah, nah. Keep it, keep it.
I
One
need
day
the
for
words
sure.
of affirmation. That'd be nice.
Yeah, all the adjectives.
Love
We'll give it to you. All
Cool.
right.
So that's our thoughts around the human-centered approach, and I'm sure there's a lot more to it. If anybody has any feedback as to how they apply a similar model or how they've related to any of those, if you have a story about how when you were 18 and you didn't understand other people and their problems, absolutely hit me up because I love those stories.
Where do they hit you up, Will?
On the website, you go to NexusPerformance.com.au, jump on the podcast link, scroll down, feedback form, fill it out, and it'll pop up straight in my inbox, and I'll read it, and I will
Laugh out loud.
potentially.
Or you can message me on Instagram and I'll send you Will's private phone number. As we discussed.
Yeah, cheers. I really like that. That's a little bit too far down the human-centered, but yeah.
All
Cool.
right.
Leave it there.
Nice.
Alrighty, red hot. Thank you for listening to Nexus Unloaded. Be sure to jump on our website to find details on everything mentioned on today's podcast, plus information on our coaching, mentoring, and gym services. Make sure to follow us on Instagram at NexusPerformance.Aus for any updates on what we are currently doing. See you all in the next episode.